Hey y'all, what's going on? I pray that all is well with y'all on today. Today we're going to talk about trusting the steps in your process. Trusting the steps in your process. Before we get to talking, I'm just going to break down a couple of words, give y'all a couple definitions, and then we're going to get right into it. Um, Process is a series of actions or steps taken in order to achieve a particular end or result. Again, I just want to repeat that again. A process is a series of actions or steps taken in order to achieve a particular end or goal. Okay? So now what I'm about to do is I'm going to take some of those key words in the definition of process and break them down, and then we're going to get right into it. The first key word is your. We're talking about your process. We're talking about your process, not my process. Well, we're going to talk about my process because we're going to use me as an example. But this is your taking steps to trust your process. Trusting the steps in your process. Nobody else's but yours. Series is a number of things or events or similar kind, that come one after another. A series. A number of things or events that come of similar kind one after another. Action, the fact or process of doing something. Now, in order to trust the steps in your process, the first thing you have to remember and realize is that it's your process. It's not anybody else's but yours. Your process, things are going to happen based off the actions that you do. In taking steps to trust your process, things will happen over time. But with that, the things that are going to happen over time are going to be based off the actions that you do within the series of events that take place within you going through your process. Let's use me for an example. When when it was time for me to have all of my different operations to get me to the standpoint where I am now, each time it took me and my mom trusting the process, the series of events or actions or steps that took place to get me to this particular end. So each time I went under the knife, and I had a total of 7 surgeries from the ages of 8 to about 13. Each time I went under the knife, it was a different process. It was a different set of steps taken to get me to this particular place of action where I am now. Another thing with trusting the steps in your process, don't compare your process to someone else's process. Like, someone with cerebral palsy can't compare my process to their process because cerebral palsy might affect us differently. We go, kind of go through some of the same struggles, but it affects us each differently. Just take, for instance, like when you go for a job. You go for a job interview, you get hired, you get on the job training. Everyone receives the same training step by step, right? With the training that you have to do. But how we each process it and take action with that process is different. So you have to understand that with entrusting your process it's your process. Yes, we might all go through similar steps of a process, but each step is different for each one of us because each one of our process is different. And comparing how I got out of a process to how someone else with cerebral palsy got out of a process, it it don't work because again, like I said, how cerebral palsy affects me can affect someone else with cerebral palsy totally different. And that goes for you too. Whatever your situation, whatever the process, growth process is that you're going through, don't compare that to someone else because everybody's process is different. We have to remember we all grow different, we all learn different. So our process steps to get to our goals, dreams, and aspirations and what God has purposed us here for is going to be different. We have different mothers, we have different fathers, we all were birthed in this world differently. So why do we assume that our process to get to our goals is gonna be the same as someone else's and we're all different? Now, if we can use a biblical reference of trusting the steps in your process to get you to where you need to be, I'm going to use the story of Esther. It's so much in the story of Esther, but I'm just going to use a little bit of it. So, with the story of Esther, just to give y'all a little backdrop for those of y'all that may not know the story, there was a king. He was married to a young lady, and she, disobeyed him, and she disobeyed him and disrespected him in front of his, court, his people of the kingdom. So, she was banished. He didn't kill her. He just banished her from his presence. So, after a while, he was looking for a companion. So, through this time, they went throughout the kingdom and they were finding what they considered the most beautiful girls in the kingdom. And Esther was chosen as one of them. Now, all of these girls went through a year-long beautification process to prepare them for when they got in front of the king. But the separation of the process for each one of them was their next step, which was what happened, what did they present when they got in front of the king? What would set them apart to make the king want for them, to come back? So each woman, was so dialed up with the best this and the best that, and they presented themselves to the king. Now, when it came to Esther, she went through the same process as all of the other young ladies. When it was time for her to be presented in front of the king, she didn't want all of the jewelry and all of that. She had on the nice gown and all of that, and she presented herself to the king as she was. No extra adulting. So she trusted her process. She trusted the gift that was in her, which she knew what God had placed her there to do. And that's what we have to realize is that on our process, on our process of growing, learning, and all of that, and tapping into who we are, like I said in the beginning, we all are going to go through similar steps within the process, but it's about what we do in the series of those process steps, what actions we take, what we learn from each step, and how we remove ourselves and what we think we're not out of the way so that God can show us what we are at that particular step. The key to trusting the steps to your own process, you guys, is first of all, trusting God. Second of all, trusting what God has placed inside of you. And thirdly, removing and praying on removing the spirit of comparison. Because if we continue to compare our process to somebody else's process and we feel we're not there and we feel we should be, that's gonna drive us crazy. Now, if Esther would have compared herself to all of the, other beautiful young ladies in the kingdom, because for one, Esther was Jewish. When she got into the kingdom, she changed her name to Esther so that no one would know that she was Jewish. You understand what I'm saying? If she would have kept her thoughts on, I'm a Jew, they already are not going to, accept me. So what do I need to do? Instead of that, she changed her name, but she didn't change her thinking process. She changed her name so it wouldn't be I'm trying to think of the word. So it wouldn't be inconspicuous that she was there. But the thing about it is, she changed her name, but she did not change who she was. And she went through every step of the process, still staying true to who she was and embracing each part of the journey. But when it got time for the extra jewels and all of that, she said, I don't need all of that. That's her trusting the steps to her process. She went through the series of actions to get her to the point where she can get in front of the king. You understand what I'm saying? And then when she got in front of the king, she said, okay, I have went through this, this, and this. Now it's time for me to do this so that I can get here. So that is what we need to do. We need to look at each step in our process that we have taken. What have we learned from each step of the process, and what is it preparing us for? Why are we scared to trust the steps in our process? It's our process. So there is no need to be fearful, because there is no right or wrong in your process and where God is trying to take you. But where we get confused and where we feel like it's a right or wrong in trusting our process is because we compare our process to someone else's. And if we feel like we have not experienced that, or God did not bless us in that way, or I went through all of this at this step and they didn't go through nothing, that's where the confusion comes in with trusting your process. The thing that really makes it hard for us to trust our own process and the steps we have to take is because, do we truly trust ourselves? Do we truly trust God the way that we do? The way that we say we do? And we're comparing. You have to get out of comparing your process to someone else's process. Our processes are always going to be different. We may go through similar steps, like I told you with the story of Esther. We may go through similar steps, but eventually, as we continue to go through a series of actions and processes to get to the steps to reach our process, to reach our purpose, steps and things are going to be different. I might be on step 2 for a long time before I get to step 3. But the point is, I'm a step further than where I was when I first started. And I'm going to end with this, in order to truly trust your steps to your process. You have to embrace it. You have to embrace it. You have to celebrate every part of your process, the good parts and the bad parts, because at the end of the day, a process is something that is continuous. A process does not have a certain time frame. I'm going to say that again. A process does not have a certain time frame. We put a time frame on our process because of the way we want it. But when you truly are trusting and embracing your process, you're going to understand day by day that a process is ongoing and there is no certain time for it to end. Because as you grow, different parts of your process is going to change. So I'm going to encourage you all today to trust the steps of your process. Trust what God is showing you. God never fails us, even when we fail Him. And if He's showing you something, and I say this all the time, if He's showing you something, He's showing it to you for a reason. It's up to you to trust what He's showing you and move with it. Don't compare your process to anybody else's. I encourage y'all this week to remove comparison out of your vocabulary. Focus on you, what's inside of you, what God is showing you, and what He's leading you to. Because we're all on this growth journey together. So we have to trust God's push. You can't want to experience a process but don't want to trust it. You gotta choose. And it's the next video, y'all. Be blessed.